For most of my life, I thought that all rainforest was tropical jungle. I have a deep love for deep forest, so wherever I go, I always try to find the local woods. The wilder, the better. This place, the Arundel Oak Woods, is part of Scotland's very own rainforest. One of the main identifying features of a rainforest is that it's wet enough for plants to survive clinging to the trees. The forest floor is made up of a thick blanket of plants, lichen and fungi, which rise up the trunks of the trees, onto the branches and even up into the canopy. It's so dense with beauty that you could spend days exploring the jungle of life on a single mossy log. I could definitely fill this entire video with shots like these. Shots that emphasize the abundance and make it feel like an endless wilderness. But that would be dishonest. I'll show you why. If the first two things people know about rainforest are that it's wet and ecologically valuable, the third thing people know is that it's under threat. This little green patch is the Arundel Oak Woods, alongside some conifer plantation. And as I zoom out, you can see it's one of a scatter of tiny remnants of rainforest amongst a vast brown emptiness in the west of Scotland. I'll show you what that emptiness is in a moment. These purple and blue colours on the map show the 20% of Britain with the right climate for rainforest. The region where a blanket of rainforest would be flourishing if our human choices hadn't removed it and weren't still actively preventing it from returning. Less than 5% of our rainforest remains, and much of it is in poor condition. Scotland's old-growth Caledonian pine forest is in a worse state still, with only 1% left. So, What kind of landscape could be so precious that would keep the hills clear of rainforest and pine woods to preserve it? What is the brown emptiness on the satellite images of Scotland? Instead of supporting Scottish forest, much of the land supports 7 million sheep instead, farmed at a loss for wool and meat, as I discussed in my last video. But up to 1.5 million hectares of Scotland looks like this in reality. What is this land meant to support? The answer is grouse shooting. The land here is regularly set alight to produce new heather shoots for young grouse to eat, so they can be shot for sport. These burns stop the land from regenerating plant cover and eventually forest that would make it easier for grouse to hide and harder for hunters to shoot. Back when I thought rainforest meant tropical jungle, I also thought that national parks were places where nature was carefully protected. But this here is the Cairngorms National Park, and the ground is scorched as far as the eye can see. 44% of this national park is Grouse Moors on private estates. Wildlife such as eagles, hawks, falcons, stoats, foxes and mountain hares are exterminated. This ensures that the grouse aren't competing for food with the wildlife, and that the wildlife isn't competing for grouse with the paying hunters. Grouse moors take up about 50 times the area of all of the remaining Scottish rainforest combined. So we could decide to multiply the amount of native forests a few times over. Imagine linking up the fragments and letting trees, mosses and mushrooms reclaim the valleys, and it would barely put a dent in the huge grouse moors. What's getting in the way of us restoring the Scottish forests? It's not because it's difficult. Forest regenerates itself for free as soon as you protect the land from the sheep and the deer that eat the saplings, or reintroduce the lynx and wolves that keep the deer in check. It's not because it would be expensive. Taxpayers are currently paying millions of pounds to subsidize every sheep and every hectare of private grouse moor. If landowners were rewarded for every hectare committed to forest restoration, instead of being paid to keep the hills bare, the landowners would keep their income. And it isn't because the public doesn't care. 70% of Scottish people oppose grouse shooting. A recent poll has found that 93% of the British public support protecting the country's rainforest. 85% back its expansion, and 80% think that public funding should support its restoration. And I think very gradually it is beginning to happen. Slowly the area of Scotland covered in native woodland has been ticking up. Scotland is home to inspiring and innovative conservation and rewilding projects. There's Trees for Life, Britain's most ambitious rewilding project, working on expanding and reconnecting the remaining fragments of Caledonian forest. I have mentioned the charity before, and I'm sure I will again, because honestly, I'm just super excited by the work they do. There are also projects by the Woodland Trust, the Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest and the RSPB. I'm going to link to the projects in the description box below. Giving space back to nature doesn't take it away from people. We are nature. In fact, if we continue to demand it, huge areas of private restricted emptiness could be opened up for public enjoyment. And year by year, we could watch our British rainforests return.